My mom texted me out of the blue. Emergency family meeting. Come home now or we're done with you forever. That was it. No explanation. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway, and my dad stood up in front of everyone. The first thing out of his mouth was, "You're 28, living in our house. No woman would touch you. No kids, no career. You're a loser." Then my sister smirked and piled on, "My friends laugh when they see you bagging groceries. It's humiliating being related to you." Not to be outdone, my brother added, "Even my 8-year-old asks why uncle sleeps until 3 p.m. and smells like failure." Finally, my mom, actually crying, said, "You have 30 days to get a $75,000 job or you're dead to us. No holidays, no birthday calls, your name erased from the will." That was 6 months ago. I've only just now gotten to the point where I can talk about it. And before I tell you what happened 3 months later, I need you to understand the backstory, because it explains why this hit so hard, and why what came next was so satisfying. I'm 28. Yeah, I was living at home, but not because I'm some basement-dwelling gamer with Dorito dust on my fingers. I've got a finance degree from a decent state school. Not Harvard, sure, but not some online scam either. I graduated with a 3.6 GPA and barely any student debt, because every summer I worked retail and saved every cent instead of blowing it on Cancun trips like half my classmates. The problem was timing. I graduated right into 2020, the year the economy tanked, hiring froze, and finance jobs disappeared overnight. I spent 2 years sending out resumes while working at a sporting goods store just to keep up with my small debt and help with bills at home. Eventually, I landed a job as a loan analyst at a regional bank. $46,000 a year. Not amazing, but solid benefits, room to grow, and actual use of my degree. I was living at home for one reason, to save for a house down payment. I'd built up $34,000 in a high-yield savings account, and my goal was $50,000 before moving out. My parents were proud. They bragged to neighbors about my discipline. That is, until 3 months ago, when they flipped on me overnight. For context, my sister Jessica is 26, married to a guy named Brandon who sells insurance and thinks is Warren Buffett. She's got a marketing degree she's never used, because Brandon supposedly makes enough for both of them. She drives a BMW X3 they can't afford and floods Instagram with pictures from restaurants where the bill probably tops my weekly paycheck. My brother Mike is 24, works in sales at an electronics store, and lives in an apartment complex that hasn't been updated since the Carter administration. He's obsessed with investment strategies, cryptocurrency, and get-rich-quick YouTube schemes. My dad runs a small landscaping business, steady for years, but lately hit hard by rising costs and cheap customers. My mom works part-time in a medical office doing billing. So last Tuesday, while I was at work reviewing loan applications, my phone started blowing up. 3 missed calls from mom in 10 minutes. Then urgent texts. When I finally called back, she didn't sound panicked, more excited, in a way that made my stomach twist. "Danny, you need to come home right now. We're having an emergency family meeting, and everyone's already here." "Is someone hurt? Did something happen to Grandpa?" "Just get here as fast as you can. You have 20 minutes, or we're making this decision without you. And trust me, you want to be here." 15 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway. It looked like either a family reunion or a wake. Jessica's BMW, Mike's red Mustang, which he also can't afford, my uncle's pickup, both grandparents' cars, cousins' vehicles, 12 in total, lining the driveway and street. Inside, it was like walking into a courtroom where I was a defendant. 26 people, all seated in a perfect semicircle. Every chair from the dining and living rooms had been dragged in, plus folding chairs from the garage. People were even sitting on the stairs. And in the center, one single empty chair, facing them all. It went silent when I walked in. Not the normal fade-out of chatter, but that sharp, cold silence you feel in your bones. Dad stood at the front, holding a laptop and a fat manila folder. His face was formal. "Sit down. Danny, we need to have a very important conversation about your future." I recognized the setup instantly. An intervention. But for what? I don't drink. Don't gamble. Don't do drugs. Dad opened the folder and started pulling out charts. "You're 28. You're living in our house, eating our food, using our utilities, taking up space, and contributing almost nothing meaningful to this family's success and reputation. I pay $400 a month in rent, plus my own car insurance, phone bill, most of my own food. I do yard work and maintenance. What was he even talking about? But he went on. Your sister Jessica has built a beautiful life with Brandon. They bought a $340,000 house and are building generational wealth. Your brother Mike is launching his own investment business and has already made $15,000 in profit this quarter from cryptocurrency. I glance at Mike, the same guy who borrowed $800 from me 6 months ago when his investment account tanked. Dad's voice hardened. You're making $46,000 in an entry-level position with no clear prospects, no girlfriend, no ambition. You're dragging down this family's reputation. Jessica jumped in, looking almost gleeful. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it is when people see you at that little neighborhood bank? I have to change the subject every time. Loan analyst isn't real finance. It's just paperwork with a fancy title. Real finance jobs make 6 figures. Mike added, my girlfriend's little sister heard about you and asked why Uncle Danny always looks tired and stressed. It's like you've given up on life. Mom was crying now, but it was angry crying. We've supported you for 28 years. You were supposed to be our success story. Instead, you're just existing. Then Uncle Bob opened the laptop. We prepared a presentation to help you understand exactly where you stand compared to your peers and what needs to change immediately. On the TV title slide, Danny's Quarter-Life Crisis, a comprehensive analysis of underachievement and required corrective actions. Slide 1, Income Comparison Jessica and Brandon, $89,000. Mike's projection, $67,000 me, $46,000. In red, labeled below acceptable standards. Slide 2, Living Situation. Slide 2 continued. Slide 3, Relationship Status. A timeline of my last 5 years of dating, with bullet points about why each relationship ended. Slide 4, Financial Contribution Charts, showing that I'm the only adult child still dependent on my parents. Slide 5, Career Development. Charts projecting that, at my current pace, I'll never achieve financial independence. Slide 6, The Ultimatum. 60 days to get a job paying at least $75,000 and move out, or you're cut from all family events and the will. Uncle Bob looked straight at me. We took a formal vote before you arrived. Danny, it was unanimous. All 26 family members present agreed you needed this wake-up call to finally start living up to your potential. I sat there for what felt like forever, trying to process what had just happened. Weeks, maybe months, of planning had gone into this elaborate intervention. They'd even created a professional presentation, complete with research and statistics, about why I was a failure. Then they voted to essentially disown me if I didn't meet their arbitrary income requirement in exactly 2 months that I tried to keep my voice steady. Does anyone want to hear my perspective on why I'm still living at home? Jessica didn't hesitate. We don't need to hear excuses. We need to see results and meaningful changes in your behavior. I'm not making excuses. I said, I'm saving for a house down payment. I have $34,000 in savings right now. I was planning to buy a place within the next year once I hit my $50,000 target. $34,000. Brandon actually laughed out loud. Danny, that's barely enough for a down payment on a decent car, let alone a house worth living in. That's when something clicked in my brain. These people weren't trying to help me or push me toward success. They were trying to humiliate me in front of the entire extended family. This wasn't an intervention. It was a public execution designed to make them feel better about their own problems. I stood up slowly and looked around the room at all 26 faces, waiting for me to break down, apologize, promise to change, beg for forgiveness. Instead, I smiled and said, okay, I accept your challenge. But when I succeed, and I will succeed, every single one of you is going to regret this day for the rest of your lives. Then I walked out. No door slamming, no shouting, no emotional breakdown. Just left quietly and drove away. That I went straight to my best friend Tyler's apartment. He's been my closest friend since high school and knows my family well enough to understand the dynamics. When I told him what had just happened, his immediate reaction was, "What is wrong with your family? That's insane." Tyler let me crash on his couch while I figured out my next move, which was incredibly generous, since his place is tiny and has got his own life to worry about. The first thing I did was start aggressively applying for every finance job I could find. But I also couldn't shake how strange the whole intervention had been. Why now? Why such a formal, over-the-top ultimatum? Why the PowerPoint instead of a normal conversation? I started thinking about the financial situations of the people who'd been most vocal. Jessica's BMW payments had to be sky high. Those leases start at $500 a month. Mike's investment profits seemed suspicious, especially since he'd asked to borrow money from me not too long ago. And my dad's landscaping business had seemed stressed lately, more than he was letting on. So I started digging. First stop, Jessica's social media. Her Instagram was a gold mine of financial irresponsibility. Multiple posts a week of $200 plus dinners for her and Brandon. Shopping sprees at Nordstrom and Kate Spade. Weekend trips to expensive resorts. All captioned with things like blessed life, living our best life, and grateful for abundance. But here's a problem. Brandon sells insurance for a regional company, and even the top sellers in our area max out around $60,000 a year. Jessica wasn't working full-time. There was no way they could legitimately afford that lifestyle that I looked at public records. They'd bought their $340,000 house with just 3% down, meaning they borrowed over $330,000 and were immediately underwater. The BMW was leased. They'd taken out a home equity line of credit just 6 months after buying the house. With Tyler's help, he works in banking, we looked at credit reporting info that's legally accessible. Turns out Jessica and Brandon were maxed out on at least 7 credit cards and had multiple high-interest personal loans from online lenders, the kind you turn to when banks won't touch you. Mike's situation was even shadier. His investment profits came from a cryptocurrency pump-and-dump scheme. The $15,000 he bragged about making, it was borrowed from 3 different family members, including our grandparents, promising to double it in 6 months. Then came the real shocker that I stopped by my dad's business office to pick up some tools I'd left there. He wasn't in, but his longtime secretary was. She's been there 15 years, always friendly. This time, she looked stressed. We had to let both full-time employees go last month, she told me. Business really that slow? I asked. It's not just slow, Danny. We haven't landed a single new contract in over 6 weeks. Your dad's been bidding jobs barely above cost just to keep the lights on. On her desk, I noticed a stack of official-looking notices, past due bills, collection letters, even what looked like legal documents. I couldn't read them closely without crossing a line, but I saw enough to know my dad's business was in serious trouble that IT started clicking. My family wasn't worried about me. They were drowning in their own financial messes and needed a scapegoat. Over the next 2 weeks, I applied for jobs with laser focus. I got interviews at 3 different companies. But I kept digging into the family finances, and what I found was way worse than I imagined. The breakthrough came when I randomly ran into my cousin Tom at a coffee shop. He's an accountant and does bookkeeping for my dad's company. After some small talk, he let something slip. Your dad's been asking if anyone's interested in buying the business. But honestly, there's nothing to buy except debt at this point. How bad is it? I asked. Tom hesitated. I probably shouldn't say, but your dad's 3 months behind on business loan payments and facing bankruptcy. The house has been remortgaged twice, and your parents are struggling to make even the reduced payments. That night, I called my Uncle Bob. He runs a successful electrical contracting business and has always been straight with me. Uncle Bob, can I ask honestly, what was that meeting really supposed to accomplish? There was a long pause. Then he said, Danny, your parents told us we were having a meeting about your future, that you needed direction and support. None of us knew it would be so formal and harsh. Did you know they were going to threaten to disown me if I didn't hit a certain income? What? No, absolutely not. I thought it was a career planning session to brainstorm opportunities for you. Bingo.my parents had lied to the extended family to get them there. Most thought it was going to be positive and supportive, not hostile and humiliating. When I explained what had actually happened, Bob was upset. That's not what I agreed to. I thought we were there to encourage you. Over the next week, I spoke with several other relatives who'd been there. Same story. They'd been misled. Why? That became obvious when I finally got a job offer, a senior financial analyst position at a larger company. More responsibility. Real growth potential. They offered $72,000. I negotiated it to $78,000, plus better benefits and a company car allowance. Now I had exactly what my family demanded, well over their $75,000 threshold that I could have gone back and shoved it in their faces. But that felt too easy. They'd humiliated me, lied to people, and dodged responsibility for their own failures. They deserved more than just seeing me succeed. They deserved to face consequences. So I started planning. I had 3 weeks before my new job started, and I used it to investigate fully. What I found was staggering. My dad's business wasn't just struggling, it was bankrupt. He owed $52,000 in back taxes, $28,000 to suppliers, and was 3 months behind on an $85,000 business loan secured by the equipment and the family home. Most of the landscaping equipment was financed and about to be repossessed. My parents' house, bought outright 15 years ago, had been refinanced twice. They now owed $190,000 and were 2 months behind. With foreclosure proceedings already in motion, Jessica and Brandon's house of cards finances were even worse. They'd put down exactly $10,200 on their $340,000 house and were already $18,000 behind on mortgage payments, less than a year after buying it. The BMW lease was costing them $540 a month, completely insane given their actual household income. On top of that, they owed $38,000 spread across 8 different credit cards, had taken out a $28,000 personal loan at 19% interest, and borrowed another $15,000 from Brandon's parents under false pretenses. Mike's business venture? Even more pathetic than I'd imagined. He'd somehow convinced our 73-year-old grandfather to invest $9,000 into his cryptocurrency trading scheme, promising guaranteed 200% returns in 6 months. Of course, the inevitable crash happened, and Mike didn't just lose Grandpa's investment. He also managed to burn through another $3,000 of his own money. Now he was stuck working double shift for the electronics store and taking out multiple payday loans just to try and pay Grandpa back before the rest of the family found out about the scam. But here's the part that actually made me angry. While they were all drowning in debt and facing serious consequences from their own irresponsible decisions, they had spent months planning an elaborate intervention to kick me out of the house, because apparently I was a family's financial burden and source of shame. The irony? I was literally the only person in the family with substantial savings, zero debt, a stable income, and a clear plan for financial independence. Yet somehow I was a problem that needed fixing. The final piece of the puzzle came from a completely unexpected source. My dad's secretary, during a casual conversation, mentioned that my parents had been systematically asking different family members for loans over the past several months, always with the same excuses about business expansion or temporary cash flow issues. Several relatives had already lent them money that was clearly never going to be repaid. Then she added, "Your mom called me yesterday asking if I knew anyone who might want to rent a room in their house. She said they were looking for extra income to help with some financial challenges." That's when it all clicked. The intervention wasn't about helping me improve my life at all. They desperately needed my room to rent out for extra cash to help cover their mortgage. The 60-day ultimatum wasn't a motivational push. It was just a way to get me out as quickly as possible so they could monetize my space. But of course, they couldn't just throw out their adult son without some kind of moral justification that made them look like responsible parents instead of desperate people exploiting their own kid. So they staged this big, concerned family intervention to make it look like they were helping me, when really, they were helping themselves. Fast forward a bit. I was having lunch with my new supervisor to discuss my start date when she mentioned that the company was looking for someone to take over management of a major client relationship that had suddenly opened up. That IT meant a lot more responsibility and some travel. But it came with a $98,000 base salary plus performance bonuses. "You impressed everyone during the interview process," she said. "We think you can handle the additional challenge, and it would put you on a fast track to senior management within 2 years." I accepted on the spot. Suddenly, I wasn't just meeting their so-called requirements. I was blowing them out of the water. A $98,000 base salary, company car allowance, an expense account for client entertainment, and a clear path to 6-figure earnings within 2 years. I was about to out-earn everyone in my family except Brandon. And his income? Mostly just a debt finance illusion. Anyway, that's when Uncle Bob accidentally gave me the idea that changed everything. A chance for real poetic justice point 2 weeks before my deadline was up. Uncle Bob called me. He'd been thinking about the intervention and was increasingly uncomfortable with how it went. "Danny, I've been reflecting on that family meeting, and something just doesn't sit right. Your parents asked me to help motivate you, not to threaten and humiliate you in front of everyone." I told him about my new job and the $98,000 salary. He was genuinely proud. "That's fantastic news. You should tell your parents right away." "I'm planning to wait until the deadline," I told him. "Let them sweat about whether I'm actually meeting their requirements." That's when he mentioned something that opened up a whole new possibility. "You know, your dad came to me last week asking for a substantial loan," he said. "Business had cash flow issues, and he needed $25,000 to cover payroll and expenses." "Did you lend it to him?" "Absolutely not. He still owes me from 3 years ago. If he's desperate enough to ask me again, things must be really bad." Now, Uncle Bob is known as the most financially successful person in our extended family. So, if my dad was asking him for money, the situation was beyond desperate. What if there's a way to help them and make a point about how they treated me? I said Bob was curious. I laid out the plan I'd been quietly forming. Admittedly, it was petty, calculated, but also perfect. Uncle Bob's business was doing well enough that he'd been looking into real estate investments. Instead of lending my dad money he'll never repay, what if we bought their mortgage? Debt! I said, "I've got $34,000 in savings for a house down payment, and you've got the connections." He went silent, thinking, "Danny, that's actually brilliant. If they're already in default, the bank might sell the mortgage at a discount to avoid foreclosure costs." We spent the next week researching. Turns out my parents owed $190,000 on the house, but foreclosure proceedings had already started. The bank might accept $150,000 to avoid legal costs and resale headaches. Between my savings and Bob's investment capital, we could easily acquire the debt, meaning my parents will become our tenants instead of my parents being my landlords. "This is a nuclear option," Bob warned. "Once you do this, there's no going back to normal family relationships." Normal relationships ended the day they humiliated me with a PowerPoint presentation about my failures. I said the plan was simple. Bob's investment company would legally acquire the mortgage. My parents could stay in the house paying us rent that was actually lower than their current mortgage. And the best part? They wouldn't know I was involved until after the deal was done. 3 days before the deadline, my mom texted, "Danny, your 60 days are almost up. Have you found a job that meets our requirements?" I didn't reply. The next day, Jessica messaged, "Hope you're ready to apologize for how you acted. Mom and Dad might give you another chance if you ask nicely." The day before the deadline, Mike called. "Dude, just get any job and tell them it pays $75K. They won't check." Clearly, none of them had learned anything. Sunday, 2 p.m., exactly 6 days since the original intervention, that I walked in wearing a brand new suit I bought for interviews, pulling up in a rental car instead of my beat-up Civic. The same 26 people were there, but this time, instead of hostile glaze, there was smug satisfaction. They thought they'd WON'd at them. My dad stood with a manila folder, ready for my defeat speech. "Danny, your 60 days are up. Do you have a job offer that meets our requirements?" I pulled out my phone and showed the contract. Senior financial analyst, $98,000 base, car allowance, bonuses, benefits. Start date tomorrow. Silence. Jessica went pale. Mike's jaw dropped. $98K. My mom stammered. Plus bonuses, about $115,000 total in the first year. Dad tried to recover. "That's excellent. Danny, we knew you could succeed if you applied yourself." "No," I said. "You didn't believe I could succeed. You humiliated me and threatened to disown me." Jessica tried to protest, but I pulled out my laptop, hooked it to the TV, and brought up my own presentation, The Real Family Crisis, Debt Breakdowns, screenshots of luxury purchases they couldn't afford, Mike's crypto scam, Dad bankruptcy and foreclosure notices, dates, amounts, everything. What I still don't understand, I said, is how you convinced 26 people to shame me when every one of you is in worse financial shape than I've ever been. Uncle Bob stood up and pulled out a folder. 2 days ago, my investment company acquired a mortgage on this house from First National Bank. You no longer owe them $190,000. You owe us $150,000, and we are officially your landlords. The good news, you will pay well over $300 less a month, which is less than your mortgage. You can't do that, Mom protested. Actually, we can. And we did. Bob said. Jessica broke down, crying. You're destroying our family over money. I'm solving problems you created, I replied calmly. You wanted me to make $75K. I'm making $98K. You wanted me to move out. I'm moving out this week. You wanted me to help the family. I just saved your house. Mike finally asked, What do you want from us? I don't want anything, I said. I exceed your criteria, but our relationship has changed forever. I started walking out. Danny, wait, Mom called. We can work this out. I turned back once. You were right about one thing. You said I needed to grow up and be financially independent. You were right about that.